out to the right, breaks a tackle. They blitz it. Prescott throws it down the right side for Lamb. Caught it! Back to throw, rush, sacked by Parsons.
Belt-tie snap. Prescott with plenty of time. Locks it in zone. Jake Ferguson.
All right, here we go. It is the month of March, and it's time for, get this, the 24th season of the Blitz, your Dallas Cowboys off-season show. Bill Jones along with Kyle Youmans, and yes, we've got the scouting combine in our rearview mirror basically right now. We're looking ahead to the start of the new league year just over a week away. This is the true March Madness when you start the NFL's new league year.
Yeah, it's March with the madness, but just no brackets this time of year. It is madness across the NFL. Of course, it has been madness. I know this is the off-season show and the Cowboys report, but there have been plenty of reports and show around the star with a new coaching staff, a whole lot of questions going into 2025. It's certainly a wild time, never a dull day. Glad to be back.
And lots of changes already, of course, going back to January ahead over the course of the next half hour. We're going to check in with Tommy Yarrish at the scouting combine, get you introduced to some of the new faces on this coaching staff as well. But let's start with the news that broke just over a week ago now, as reportedly Zach Martin has decided to call it a Hall of Fame career.
And what a career it was in Dallas for Zach Martin. He's going to finish with more first-team All-Pro nods than he did accepted holding penalties throughout his NFL career. Of course, he was nominated and given the nod to 7 first-team All-Pro honors by the AP. And there's so much to go around and to wrap your head around what Zach Martin brought to this offensive line. Of course, it's also the end of an era because you no longer have the Tyron Smith, the Travis Frederick, and the Zach Martin, 3 guys up front that were certainly at the top of their game and at the top of the position group. Zach Martin was the leader of those guys ever since being drafted in the first round of 2014. He was the Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee this past year as well. Missed the final 7 games due to injury and ultimately said it's time to hang up the cleats. There were some rumors that he could have gone elsewhere. He would have had an opportunity to sign with another NFL team. Not the case. He decides, I want to retire as a Cowboy. More of an announcement expected from Martin's camp coming soon. But right now the reports are that his career will come to a close.
Well, and you were talking about a 7-time first-team All-Pro player, and when you look at the history of this franchise, the storied history of this franchise, only 2 other players, Bob Lilly and Randy White, were 7-time first-team All-Pro players, and both of those guys were also first-ballot Hall of Famers. This is a huge hole to fill on that offensive line.
It really is, and of course, he will be a first-ballot Hall of Famer when it's all said and done. It's next stop Canton for Zach Martin, but what's the next move for the Dallas Cowboys? That's the biggest question, I think, going into this offseason. Do you feel comfortable with the way you filled in that void late in the season with guys like Brock Hoffman and TJ Bass? The young players up front for Dallas are certainly an option. Do you want to spend a pick in that spot, whether it be at the 12th overall selection in the NFL draft or maybe wait until the 2nd or the 3rd round? There's also an opportunity to possibly move Cooper Beebe from the center spot, move him to guard, let him be your right guard of the future, which was his natural position during his time in college at Kansas State, was an all Big 12 right guard during his time with the Wildcats in the Little Apple. Now you have an opportunity to move him back to his natural position, possibly put Brock Hoffman at center or draft a center. Their options are there. I think the first thing that needs to be figured out is what are you going to allocate your money toward in free agency? Do you have the spending and the salary cap money to go and get a veteran center or a veteran guard? And then if you're able to do that, great. Now we can kind of maneuver from there and allocate the draft capital as such. But until that point, I think the plan right now would be to move BB to right guard and then end up trying to draft somebody and fill in the voids elsewhere.
All right, it's going to be interesting to see what the Cowboys do. We're just getting started on this edition of The Blitz. When we come back, we hear from Matt Eberflus, the Cowboys' new defensive coordinator, who, of course, is an old familiar face. And what did Stephen Jones say at the Combine this week?
The Dallas Cowboys Blitz, presented by Blockchain.com, is brought to you by AT&T, an official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys, and by Blockchain.com. Invest like your icons with Blockchain.com. This segment is brought to you by AT&T, official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Blitz. Lots of changes on this Cowboys coaching staff this offseason. How about at the defensive coordinator position, where an old familiar face is back? Matt Eberflus. Nicole Hutchison has more.
For the third time in 3 years, a new defensive chapter is being written in Dallas. And for the second, there's a familiar face that will take the reins of a defense that's hungry for change.
Let's go. Get after it. Grateful for the opportunity, really, just to work with this crew. Want to really thank the Jones family for bringing me on as a defensive coordinator, and Brian Schottenheimer, and going forward, just really attacking this job and working with the players to have an attacking defense.
Matt Eberflus, in his first time speaking with the media, making his defensive philosophy clear.
Pretty simple. We take the ball away. That's what we do. We stop the run. And, we want to make exciting plays for our football team.
Eberflus might have not had success as a head coach in Chicago, but his defensive mind is well respected around the NFL. From 2018 to 2021, Eberflus's defense as a DC in Indianapolis averaged 26.7 turnovers a game per season. In 2021, the Colts were tied with the Dallas Cowboys at plus 14 in turnover margin for the NFL lead. And the Colts' 33 takeaways were also the second highest in the NFL that year. And in terms of stopping the run, the Colts defense allowed the fourth fewest rushing touchdowns in 2021. And in the 2018 and 2020 seasons, the Colts gave up less than 4 yards per carry. How about Chicago? Well, the defense led the NFL in interceptions in 2023. But to translate those stat lines here in Dallas, it'll take more than work.
It's about fundamentals, playing your technique, and obviously the better players you have, the better they are. So it's important to have that too. But it's about guys being in the right spot and being where they're supposed to be. With the demeanor, we've had some good run defenses in the past here, so we're excited about getting that back.
And in an Eberflus scheme, the key to success for this defense, of course, starts with unlocking star pass rusher Micah Parsons' full potential. But the next step, having a difference maker at defensive tackle.
The more you have, the better, and you can see that with a couple people in our division. The more dominant players, you can't just look and see, and pick on a certain guy in terms of in the run or the pass protection. So it's good to have at least 2 guys, maybe 3 guys opposite each other.
From linebackers coach in Dallas to becoming the head man in charge in Chicago in a 7-year span, his philosophy has matured, something he hopes to showcase in the 2-1-4.
You want to learn and grow from every experience and impart that wisdom onto the next crew, and it's important to do that.
Reporting in Frisco for DallasCowboys.com, I'm Nicole Hutchison.
Cowboys go from Dan Quinn to Mike Zimmer, and now Matt Eberflus, a very well-respected defensive coordinator around the league.
Yeah, they certainly have a type, huh? Former head coaches for their defensive coordinator position, and Eberflus is certainly one that had that type of reputation preceding him prior to taking that job with Indianapolis. Was, of course, the defensive coordinator in Indianapolis after he was here with Dallas, then went to Chicago, was the head coach. And while he had some ups and downs in Chicago, what he did with the Colts was significant. And one thing that he helped improve was their defensive line play and their linebacker play, all leading up to one of the best run defenses in football. That's what he wants to establish. That's why Brian Schottenheimer believes he's the right man to help lead this defense. And he enters with a thought process that we've got some pieces here already that we can employ and have some fun with, but also there's still some work left to be done to make this defense better.
There's a lot more pieces they need to add to that defensive line, and we'll have more on that. And we go to the scouting combine in Indianapolis and hear from Stephen Jones when the Blitz continues in just a moment.
This segment was brought to you by AT&T, official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys. This segment is brought to you by Reliant, the official energy provider of the Dallas Cowboys.
No, I mean, we're going to be selectively aggressive out here. I mean, we want to, obviously our goals historically have been, to try to fill as many of your must and needs before the draft, so you can pick best player on your board. You didn't get that totally accomplished last year, but certainly that's always the goal, and every year is different.
Welcome back to the Blitz. Bill Jones along with Kyle Youmans. The key phrase there, selectively aggressive. That's the Cowboys' approach to this offseason, whether it's free agency, as far as the draft. We're going to be selectively aggressive here because we're going to aggressively head to Indianapolis in the scouting combine, joined by Tommy Yarrish of DallasCowboys.com. And Tommy was there to hear Stephen Jones. What was your takeaway from what you heard from Stephen, Tommy?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway from that is selectively aggressive, which is what Stephen Jones responded to when asked about what the Cowboys are going to do in this free agency cycle in comparison to last year where they really didn't have a lot of action. So what selectively aggressive means, that's up to your interpretation, but that's how the Cowboys are going to approach free agency. And then he also sprinkled some other interesting nuggets in there about starting contract negotiations with Oso Odighizuwa this week, not seeing any sort of roadblocks in terms of getting a Micah Parsons extension done, and then looking at DeMarcus Lawrence too and his future with the Cowboys or really elsewhere in football. Those conversations would be happening this week.
So the selectively aggressive has started to turn into this year's version of the all-in comment from Jerry last year. And, of course, there's a level of aggression that you're going to have to try and find. Tommy, whenever you look at that aggression moving forward, what could it look like in free agency, and how could it possibly affect the draft strategy?
Yeah, that's what it's all about, is what is the definition of that. So that's why it's up to our interpretation for now, but ultimately it's going to be the Cowboys' interpretation of what selective aggression means. If I had to guess, I think that they're going to, that selective part of it is in terms of the players that they bring in, because when you think about if they're being selective, it's likely because they might feel the squeeze of the cap and trying to maneuver around which guys they can fit in terms of free agency. I still think that this is going to be a heavy draft and develop team, so you're going to look at a lot of these draft picks as more important than free agents really for this offseason. I think that these free agency guys that they select and they are selectively aggressive with is going to be smaller deals in terms of the money that goes to it, just because they've got to make it all fit within the cap.
All right, Tommy Yarrish at the scouting combine. And Tommy, we're going to ask you to be selectively aggressive. When we come back here on the Blitz, how about you selectively be aggressive and find Will McClay? And let's hear from the Cowboys Vice President of Player Personnel when we come back.
This segment was brought to you by Reliant, the official energy provider of the Dallas Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Blitz. Get ready to let the good times roll at the Star in Frisco this Fat Tuesday, March 4th from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. It's the Mardi Crawl you don't want to miss. Join for drinks, lively entertainment, all sorts of live music, and delicious bites as you hop between the hottest spots at the Star in Frisco. Grab your most colorful attire, grab some beads as well, and get into the Mardi Gras spirit. Admission is free. For more info, visit thestardistrict.com.
That is this week at the Star. And you know who the busiest guy in Indianapolis might be? It would be one Tommy Yarrish, who has a very special guest.
We are checking in here from Indianapolis at the NFL Combine, now joined by Cowboys Vice President of Player Personnel, Will McClay. Will, I know it's a busy time. Thanks for making some of yours. We'll start with this. Working with the new staff and trying to get all these guys on the same page early on in this process, what has that been like so far in these first couple of weeks that you've all had together and now all coming together here at the Combine?
I think it's exciting because you get that energy of the energy of the new people coming in, the direction we're going in, what we're trying to do. So then communicating with the staff, making sure we're on the same page. At the end of the day, we're looking for good football players and continuing to build the depth on that. They're telling us the fine parts of what we're looking for. And it's been fun because we're all sitting around talking about it and understanding what each other does. And I think it's going to make us better.
On this staff, you've got a mixture of guys with a lot of NFL experience, a mixture of guys with a lot of collegiate experience. Bringing that all together, what's that process been like in terms of making sure that everybody is on the same page? And how have you seen this group grow together in this short time? And do you feel like they're, for the most part, already getting to that point where everybody's on the same page?
Yeah, it's exciting to see the staff come together. And you talk about the different pieces. It's, we have a meeting. We had coaches from 6 different teams to give us input on players that have been on their teams that are free agents. So that's a leg up for us. The college coaches coming in and understanding the college game, how it relates to the NFL game, some of the things that they bring there, their knowledge of players that have been recruited in the recruiting game. So that brings more depth to what we do, and then getting everybody on the same page, and it happens quickly when you talk about synergy or whatever, because there's so many things that they are talking about that we believe in that continues to help it grow.
You and Brian Schottenheimer have been here for a couple of years now together, but now you're getting to see him in this environment as a head coach. I know it's been early in the week, but what stands out about how he is leading this group and leading this process as the head man in Dallas?
He's very humble but very hungry, and what I mean by that is he assembled a staff of most coaches. When they assemble a staff, they got a bunch of their friends and people that they know. He went out to find the best for what he was looking for, ideas and new guys to bring new things and make it his way. So number one, that's been extremely positive. Number two, the communication. He's going to be confrontational with the communication, but respectful with that, and test your conviction. And he's very, very clear with what he wants and what he wants to do, and getting everybody on the same page.
I know it's still early, like we've talked about with this staff, but as you've gotten to know them, know Brian Schottenheimer, know these coordinators, know these assistants, what stands out about this group compared to some of the others that you've had in the past?
I mean, we've been very fortunate to have a bunch of good coaching staffs. I just think this one brings in a different energy. They bring their own little splash, and as long as the staff is together and as long as the staff, we communicate with them and they want to develop players, because in this league you can't pay them all. We identify them and then develop and coach and teach. That's the thing that I'm also very excited about when listening to what they're going to do in the offseason leading up to the season. You can see when you get a player, we're going to develop that player and we're going to do things to make that player better. That's part of the staff. That's part of what we're going to try and do. So you feel like, hey, we just got to find the right players with the right mentality to fit the right roles, and then we're going to coach them up.
All right, thanks to Tommy Yarrish there in Indianapolis. He's not the busiest man in Indianapolis. Will McClay and the scouting staff are, and the coaching staff. They're the busiest guys here at the Star in Frisco. Let's meet some of them when we wrap up the Blitz in just a moment.
Closed captioning is brought to you by the Texas Lottery. Dallas Cowboys scratch tickets from the Texas Lottery are here. Play today. To watch more Dallas Cowboys content on your connected TV, download the Cowboys Now app on Amazon Fire, Roku, and Apple TV. The Dallas Cowboys Blitz, presented by Blockchain.com, was brought to you by AT&T, an official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys. And by Blockchain.com. Invest like your icons with Blockchain.com.
I'm really excited about the opportunity to let it unfold and look at it and say, how do we put these guys in position, an advantageous position as many times as we can within a game, and that's the challenge to me. And when you have good players, that's a little bit easier.
The new Cowboys offensive coordinator Clayton Adams comes from the Arizona Cardinals, and Kyle Youmans. How about those offensive coaches on this staff?
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement around what Clayton Adams and Brian Schottenheimer have built on the offensive side of the ball. Of course, Schotty will call the plays. Clayton Adams comes from that offensive line pedigree, and he's not the only one that has that opportunity. Connor Riley, the offensive line coach, he comes over from Kansas State. Of course, he was the collegiate head coach of one Cooper Beebe, who we mentioned early in the show, may be making a switch. And then Linda Wells there at the bottom, one of the returners on the offensive side. Good to have him back because he's done a tremendous job with this tight end bunch. And then you look at the defensive coaching staff as well. We talked earlier about Matt Eberflus and heard from him the excitement he's brought to the table. I know there's a lot of intrigue around what Andre Curtis can do as the defensive passing game coordinator, coaching up those safeties. They've got a couple veterans returning in that position. And then Aaron Whitecotton, what can he do coming over from the New York Jets, taking over that defensive line and trying to get them back to prominence up front?
And then you, as the special teams coaches, the special teams coordinator, Nick Sorensen, who was the defensive coordinator for San Francisco last year. Great special teams player when he was a player in this league as well. Carlos Polk returns to the Cowboys as the assistant special teams coach. And then you got the strength and conditioning coaches who return. Yeah. I like this group. I like the energy that Brian Schottenheimer has put together on this group.
And that's what it is. It's about energy, it's about culture, and it's about building a competitive environment within your building. They've done that with the offense, defense, and special team staffs. There's a lot of excitement about the coaches that they've brought in, and Brian Schottenheimer leading the way.
All right, that does it for the first edition of the Blitz for this year. Make it a great week.